So, Vibeke, we are so excited that you have agreed to share your knowledge, your passion, and all your research with us on this online course. But before we get into the detail of perhaps what you're going to be covering, I thought it'd be really interesting to find out a little bit more about you. We know that you're a vet, a university lecturer, and a researcher. But how did you get to where you are now? Have you always been interested in horses?
Thank you, Gillian, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and do this course. I'm really looking forward to it and to share all these kind of, exciting things, because I really think it's very exciting, this topic. Yes, I am a vet. I'm a lecturer at the university and doing research exactly in these myofascial connections. And no, I haven't always been in this region. And no, I haven't always been that interested in horses. But I did a chiropractic education about 10 years ago now, and 10, 12 years ago. And I realized that there's so much into this functional anatomy that we don't know anything about. And when I then started doing dissections with some of my colleagues, doing the fascia lines, and I was also attending a conference, all of a sudden I realized that there's much more into the locomotion system that we would ever think about. So I was just going down, to the dissection room, and we were experiencing so many interesting things. And all of a sudden, we could find a collaboration between structures that we haven't even been, thinking about before. We've just accepted that, for instance, that the hamstrings are working like flexing knee, pushing off, but the connection to the back and the connection down to the toe, we didn't even, reckon it previously. And with the lines, we all of a sudden have a kind of map over the full body now, a three-dimensional map that we somehow can understand and get experience from. And when I'm treating horses and other animals, then I'm using these lines very much in order to find out, well, I have a problem here, for instance, in the back. Where could I expect to see some other problems? Where can I expect to see some compensations? So I really use it to understand, first of all, why is the animal moving like it is, and try to find the places where we have compensatory patterns and understand those too. So we not only relieve the patterns, the compensations, but also get closer to the primary problem.
Have you published any of this research, this map that you talk about? Is this published work?
Yes, it is published work. We have published the superficial lines already. That was in 2015. And right now we are publishing also the deep lines, the deep equine myofascial kinetic lines. So it's published, and we have written a book which will be out on the market within a short time. So we have a lot of things that you can get some information from. Yes.
Oh, that's great. And what about myofascial release techniques? Because obviously we've got the maps which you've dissected out and published, but has there been much research and published work about the efficacy of myofascial release techniques themselves?
We have done some studies about the myofascial release techniques in general. I have a colleague, Adrian Harrison, who's doing myofascial measurements, or more like muscle measurements, where we can see that when we do kinds of release, different kinds of release, then we get an effect on the muscles. So we have done some, but it's a very different, or not different, it's a very difficult job to do, because it is a three-dimensional structure that we are working with, and there are so many interconnections, so it's difficult, to go to and get precise informations. What we do have is actually a lot of experience in both testing and releasing the lines. The release, I mean, can be done in several ways, both on specific points, but also in very specific points in the lines.
So on the 12th of Monday, the 12th of April, we will be broadcasting this course via Zoom. We'll have the whole day, 9 till 5, with some breaks, of course, but there's plenty of time to get loads of information into there. Can you tell us what you'll be covering and what therapists can expect to get from the day, Vibeke?
Yes, sure. What I intend to do is to go through some general research knowledge about the fascia, which is relevant in relation to the lines. And I will go through the lines and tell about which structures are included in the lines, and give some examples of how the animals are moving and how the animals are standing when we have difficulties in the lines. And then we will go through some of the tests that you can do when you will test the different lines.
So mostly the day is going to be looking at the theory and really understanding the anatomy of these myofascial lines, but there will be a little bit of practical information, testing that therapists can really use in their practice.
Yes, exactly. So you can go home and test and understand and look at horses and have an impression of, well, it could be this in this line that was problematic here in this horse, and understand where am I then going to have a look to see if there are problems or compensations going on in these places.
I have had the privilege of hearing you speak now a number of times at our conferences, and so I know how truly passionate you are about this subject, and I know how you pour your energy into the lectures, so I know it's going to be a fabulous day. But could you perhaps explain why you think therapists need to know this information and how they can apply it to their work?
Yes, I can try to, but I mean, they will realize themselves when they start looking at the horse in this way. Because first of all, I mean, our general approach to a horse and to an animal and to ourselves too, is that a muscle goes from here to there, and then it's doing something when it's contracting, flexing or extending, whatever. But looking at the fascia system, suddenly, I mean, includes a three-dimensional way of adaptation and working in the body. So all of a sudden, instead of having this two-dimensional work system, then we have the three-dimensional working system. So the therapists coming to this point, understanding this, that it's three-dimensional, that we have to look and we will get an impression of the three-dimensional interaction, gives so much more when looking at the animals, doing so much more and giving so much more when you're starting treating, because all of a sudden you're not only thinking about flexion and extension of this joint, you're thinking about the whole body. You're thinking about how the things are collaborating in quite a different way compared to what I was brought up with and what most of us is brought up to and brought up with in the ordinary systems, in the European way of thinking medicine and locomotion.
That's great. Thank you so much, Vibeke. I personally am really looking forward to this day. And
Me too.
yeah, I hope to see lots of you there. Thank you.